And yet she was pushed forward onto the Supreme Court the same way Obama was, even though he has no distinguishing marks in his career. He's never written anything anyone could cite, anything anybody can remember. He was unknown. Again, pushed forward basically for reasons other than qualifications. In other words, so we have an affirmative action president. Now we have an affirmative action Supreme Court justice. So what's actually going on in the United States of America? There is an article from the American Thinker linked up on michaelsavage.com about Obama, and it is entitled something very interesting. Obama, a modern-day Roman plebeian tyrant, written by a Dr. Frank Rosenblum, M.D. And he says, many comparisons have been made between the Roman Empire and the United States. The Roman Empire was the most powerful civilization on Earth. Similarly, the United States for now is the sole remaining superpower. However, with the good comes the bad, and the decline and fall of the Roman Empire has been compared to the decline and pending fall of the United States. We often forget the fact that the Roman Empire was preceded for 450 years by the Roman Republic, which arose in 509 BC with the overthrow of the Roman monarchy. So for 450 years, there was a Roman Republic. Now, how old is the American Republic? Do you have any idea? Well, I'll go on. Of course, there's an interesting correlation with the American Revolution, which also overthrew government by monarchy. Rome was structured around a strong constitution, though little of it was written down. The early years of the Republic were marked by political power held by a strong aristocracy descended from earlier royalty. In a series of events very similar to developments in our own country, the Republic devolved into rule by a series of popularly elected political elites who circumvented the Constitution for political purposes. Shall I read on? The Roman Constitution, we read, was a powerful code designed with a complex system of checks and balances and served as a model for our own Constitution. But it eventually was dissolved by professional politicians. And he explains how it was done. And then he talks about plebeians taking over. Many of you know what plebeians are. If you had a reasonable college or high school education, you know what a plebeian is. Then we read around 200 BC, there was an economic crisis similar to the one we are experiencing today. The plebeians, especially farmers, found themselves unable to afford their homes, and they demanded a bailout from the government. When the Senate refused, an uprising occurred, resulting in increased power for the popularly elected plebeian council. The country was then essentially controlled by new plebeian political elites, who were, however, mostly concerned with their own power and not about the problems of the people who elected them. Does that sound familiar to you? As common plebeians fell further into debt, unemployment rose, and farmers could no longer sell their produce, resulting in widespread bankruptcy. People began voting for politicians who promised bailouts. Populist leaders emerged who promised change. The final decades of the Roman Republic saw an eerily familiar increase in the dependence of the average Roman citizen on their government, along with tax increases to pay for government programs. The Republic had slowly devolved into a democracy wherein people voted themselves benefits they had not earned. Sound familiar? Now, I'll continue with this brief article on the Savage Nation in a moment, but I want to remind you of something that's very important for you to know. 85% of the American people are covered by health care. Are you aware of the fact that any illegal alien can go into an emergency room in this country and get gold-plated medical treatment for free right now? So who is it, in fact, who is not covered? Who is it that Obama and Feinstein and Boxer and Reed are so anxious to cover? And why are we supposed to pay for health care for people who are not even citizens? Why should we pay for their health care and their children's health care? Why? The answer is we should not. And that, my friends, is why there is anger emerging at the town hall meetings. We know we're being robbed blind by these Bolsheviks, and we're not going to take it anymore. I'll be right back.
I'm Kim Commando. You can keep up with all things digital Monday through Friday in the noon hour with My Digital Minute on Talk 910 KNEW.
I'm reading from an article called Obama, a Modern-Day Roman Plebeian Tyrant by Frank Rosenblum, M.D. in the American Thinker, which I put up on michaelsavage.com, and I'm going to get to the bottom. So there's an economic crisis. The people keep voting themselves raises from the government. There's tax increases. And then slowly the Republic of Rome devolves into a democracy where people vote themselves benefits they didn't earn. Then in 133 BC, Tiberius was elected as tribune. In a move that would be considered Obama-esque, he attempts to spread the wealth by proposing a law that would have limited the amount of land any particular individual could own. And then he redistributes land to the poor, like Mugabe, right? He was later murdered, but his brother was elected and continued to support populist policies that circumvented the Constitution. Then a new political party emerges. The Democratic Popularity Party gains power. They regularly break the law in the name of democracy. In a final attempt to reestablish constitutional rule and strengthen the Senate, Lucius Sulla, a member of the conservative Optimate Party, took control as dictator, passed laws to strengthen the Constitution and the Senate, and then resigned. But then another populist movement, like Acorn, arises in about 65 BC to address the problems of the poor. When they were unable to pass all of their reforms legally, they began using illegal methods. Eventually, Julius Caesar, a popular politician, was installed as dictator in 44 BC, influenced by his greatness as a general and his distribution of benefits, such as food subsidies to the population and free land to his former soldiers. He began appointing officials some today would call czars. Obama's appointed 27 czars. They were named after Russian czars, a word originally derived from the word Caesar, that would not have to be approved by the legislature. But his tenure was cut short by assassination. After Mark Antony was defeated by Octavian at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, the Senate gave Octavian extra constitutional powers in 27 BC, effectively terminating the Roman Republic forever. The summary above is a short synopsis, not a complete history. However, the parallels are unnerving, and we can easily see the chilling similarities. Aristotle warned, quote, republics decline into democracies, and democracies degenerate into despotisms, close quote. The Federalist Papers show us that the Founding Fathers understood this all too well. Just as the Roman Senate became more democratic, so too our own Senate changed from being indirectly elected to direct popular election in 1913. We were founded as a republic, partly because democracies become weaker as they grow, whereas republics can become stronger. Yet we elect populists like Chairman Obama, whose unaffordable promises and unconstitutional actions, after the manner of Tiberius, Caesar, and Octavian, will be recorded in history as the beginning of the end of our republic. We slip further into a democracy of dependence on government and control by it. Inevitably, we too will degenerate into despotism and tyranny, he writes. This has already begun. From antiquity through the present, great thinkers like Aristotle and our Founding Fathers have warned us of the dangers of repeating the mistakes of prior civilizations. Those who survive us will learn how the selfish majority, at the behest of power-hungry political elites, accepted subjugation in exchange for benefits, and thereby sowed the seeds or acorns of our destruction. Barack Obama, plebeian politician to senator to dictator wannabe. The USA, republic to democratic dictatorship and then despotism. It not only can happen, but it will, unless we learn from history and prevent its repetition. Obama, a modern-day Roman plebeian tyrant, written by Dr. Frank Rosenblum. Now, I want to quote something from the preface to my book, The Enemy Within, Saving America from the Liberal Assault on Our Schools, Faith, and Military. Unfortunately, the book I wrote, while it became a bestseller, did not stop the Bolshevik tide that has swept America. I quoted Cicero like this: a nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely. His sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. For the traitor appears not a traitor. He speaks in accents familiar to his victims, and he wears their face in their arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politics that it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to fear. So wrote Roman orator and statesman in 42 BC Marcus Tullius Cicero, as quoted by Michael Savage in The Enemy Within. Ladies and gentlemen, I rest my case. I turn it over to you, the people. The phone number here is 1-800-449-8255. Let's take the callers. Orlando, Florida. Raphael, go ahead, please. You're on the Savage Nation.
Sotomayor, she's just as qualified as any Supreme Court justice that's been.
Well, is that because you like it that she's Hispanic, or is it because of something she has written that we can refer to?
It's because that she is qualified. Whatever she.
That's because an ignorant man like you says so, or because she has written something that we should read to say, yes, she is qualified. So, my good friend, tell me what she has written that you can quote me that would qualify her to be on the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Perhaps there's something I missed.
Just like any justice, whereas you can't quote what they have written.
Now you're playing rhetorical games, but you're a kindergartner. You're dealing with a professor. So, at the risk of your displeasure, Raphael, I'm going to tell you that you did not make your case.